Hey, this is going to be about basic things about Crew Chief software. And so we're going to get started with the simplest things, which are the main screen here, what we call the picture screen. You can double click on any of these pictures that come in the software. Just double click on them. If you have a file on your computer that you'd rather use, just select it. On the right-hand side, I like to get pictures of my car going to the right, and on the left-hand side, the same way. It will cycle through all of them, but it won't win you any races, but it's kind of nice to personalize Crew Chief software. And on top of that, if something ever happens to your computer, well, then you can prove it's yours if somebody finds it. Press enter to start. You can ask questions. Just click on the question area, and I will attempt to answer them as they come up, unless it's really not appropriate. Again, we're going to cover a lot of the basic things and get people back into thinking about racing again. So this is the main run entry screen. A couple of things, especially for the beginners, to remember is these are tabs at the very top here, like the opponent information tab, the run completion tab. So if you call me and I say go to the run completion tab or predict DT or predict throttle stop tab, you know what I mean up here. Above those are menus. The menus like the file, setup, search, those are up here. Live timing, your videos, team users, all of that in yellow at the top are what we call menus. So if I tell you to go to the database menu, that's going to be at the very top. So really the most important things in Crew Chief software understanding is the databases menu at the top here. My artistic talent isn't that great, but databases, that menu right there is where you'll need to set up databases for your different tracks, especially if they're different. And if you're a throttle stop racer and you also ET race, you'll definitely want databases for both. And databases control the entire environment in which Crew Chief runs. For example, this is an 8th mile database that I've selected. Right here is the database drop-down list where you select them after they're set up. It's called 8th mile sea level 1.9 shift, and it's set up to be 4-digit precision. So you notice there's a period, a decimal. I'm going to like reaction time here. It shows a period, decimal, 0079, which is abnormal for many tracks. They only have 3-digit precision, but this particular track in Central Illinois Dragway in Havana, Illinois has 4-digit precision. So when you set those up, it'll have 4-digit precision. They also have a 594-foot clocking. So that's why this field appears on those databases, because I've told it to appear at Havana. Your track may or may not have that, but I want to show you where this very important areas are. So in order to use Crew Chief software properly, we want you to have databases that mean something. So for example, this is a 8th mile one, as I've explained, and you notice that after the 8th mile, it says 8th mile database here, but there's no 1,000-foot and there's no throttle stop information over here. That's controlled by the database. So let me explain. I'm going to erase these drawings, and I'm going to switch back some runs. And I'm doing that by using the switch runs thing on the bottom right here. There is switch to previous run, switch to next, last. That same thing is also in your upper left. I've added some little arrows up by the run date right there, because it's such a long way to go either way. So I figured I might as well put them in the most common corners that people are going to be with their mouse. So you can switch runs very rapidly doing that. And that's the procedure that we'd like people to use. So I'm going to switch back, and these are all 8th mile databases now, runs. And now it just switched to a throttle stop database. And let me bring it to your attention why this happened. So this database is 2021-0125 First Timer SuperComp. It is a throttle stop database. It's quarter mile, so the 1,000-foot fields, quarter mile, and all that appear down here. And it's also a throttle stop. So it says throttle stop info on the bottom left, and it's got information about throttle stop info. So that's controlled by that database. Very important that you understand databases, and we're going to get into those a lot. So you see just by switching databases how the whole screen changed. Also, up here it says this Predict Throttle Stop tab up here in the top middle. Instead of just keep your eye on that and watch what happens when I switch back to an 8th mile run. Now it says Predict DT in the top middle, and all those fields are gone again. So I go through this all the time with customers, and I don't mind doing that because it's such a powerful part of the program that controls all of that. So let me go back. It doesn't matter whether you're a throttle stop racer or an ET racer, because the program is a predictor, a logbook, all of that, and it doesn't matter. The only thing is when you add a throttle stop is one more set of variables, but the ET prediction logic is very, very similar between both. So let's go over some of the things that are on the screen that you may or may not see on yours, but it's important to understand. And then we're going to get into databases. So here, when you are at a race, let's say it's today's, on the top middle area there, I just put an arrow to start new run. That is only used if you're racing today. If you're going to put an old run in, you don't click start new run. The reason you don't is because start new run will assume today's date. So if it's an old run, just simply go to the run date field right here and type over the date with the correct date, press enter, put the correct run number for that day, and press enter, and it will automatically add a new run if it's not found. The only time you use start new run is if you're racing today. Just keep that in mind. That's why I'm going to repeat that. So let me erase these. So if I want to find a run from, let's see, 10-2, 10-1, if I want to go, let's say 10-03-21, run number 1, press enter, you see how it found a different run. All of this information changed because it looked up the run date and the run number. That's how we store runs. Those two fields have to be unique. So what I'm talking about is these two fields right here have to be unique on the upper left. You can't enter, if you have multiple cars, you cannot enter the same run number for both cars. Those of you that have multiple cars, you can get with me or the next week's webinars. We're going to have 3 of them. We're going to have one for ET racers next week, one for throttle stop racers, and one for junior dragsters next week. But those with multiple cars, you can get with me later and I'll explain the proper procedure for doing that. Some other things that are somewhat hidden here are on the 60-foot field. I'm going to circle this right here. This is what we call a label, actually, not a field. That 60-foot field has some hidden logic in it, because if you double click right where I circled, you'll notice that split intervals appear right here. Okay? Though you can turn on or off with that field. So if I double click 60 foot again, they'll disappear. I like that because as I'm entering runs, I know my split intervals, what they should be, and as I'm typing the run in, I immediately know if the run's a good run or a bad run just simply by how it looks as I'm typing it. I know I should be about 124 something from the 1,000 to quarter mile. So I look at that as I'm typing. I know I'm about 150 from the 660 to the 1,000, and vice versa. So I always know, and if I'm typing a run in that doesn't quite make sense, I'll immediately see there's a problem, and whether it's really that important, whether it's track related or whatever. But that's a field for those of you that know your car real well in split intervals. It's kind of nice to see that as you're typing it in. Now, the other thing that's down here on I'm assuming you guys with the newest version of the Crew Chief. This is 7.96 version. Here are two fields that there's no explanation next to them. But what that is total is right here is how far you are from your dial. I was minus 7 thou. And what your total package is to the right of that, where that arrow is. So had I been, because I was 7 thou quick and a 15 light, the total package is 8 thou. You can use that as you want. I just like to have it as I go. It saves me from thinking about it. That's all. So it calculates that all automatically. Other things that are on the screen here, ignition timing. Some of you will have this. This is also a hidden field that does things. So as you double click on it, you'll see your screen changes to different things that people want. That's a manual transmission area, nitrous, turbocharged or supercharged, just whatever you want can be up there. There's a whole bunch, and as people ask for certain things, that's where it goes. The other thing that's important, at least for me, is what we call a traction meter field. This was added recently, but that's right here, and that's your representation of how you felt the track was. So it was 0 to 100. I felt that run was 88% of a perfect track. That's what that means, basically. Now, if you actually have a torque meter that you put on the track and twist, then you can put that torque value in there. I don't know too many sportsmen that have that. Matter of fact, I don't know really anybody. But that's available to you. And I don't predict with anything in the 70s. Let's put it that way. And what will happen is I'll get one that is a really good run, and the run before it was a 78, now it's an 88. Well, I pick up 400s, and it's just because it wasn't spinning the tires. So it's a good thing to pick up of and pay attention to, and put that information in. The other thing that's important here, I keep bouncing around because I want to keep your attention. I'm going to circle in here the left-hand side and put an arrow. That's how bright it was in that run. You can drop this down and pick overcast, twilight, dark, but keep track of that. And I'll show you here in just a second why that's important. That wasn't in previous versions. So let's go back to this 8th mile here. The other thing that you really will have to get used to using is event logbook. Bottom right area where this beautiful arrow is. That's an event logbook button. You can also get there with Control L. If you hold your CTRL key on your keyboard and type the letter L as in Larry, it will jump to that event logbook button without you having to click, and which is really kind of handy to have. So if I click that, it goes to and puts all the runs side by side. This is your logbook screen. You must get used to using this. It's extremely important. It has many features on here that are like number one, important. And I let my son enter these runs here, and he forgot to put a couple of things here. Just a minute. Dark. Save. Now, the logbook. And I want to show you, the logbook here has all the runs side by side. And here I did something wrong. Just a second. Save. Let me go to last. Dark. Save. Let me go. I'm going to fix a couple of these things I should have noticed. When you make a mistake in Crew Chief, all you have to do is type over the information, press enter, and then save it again. And it will automatically fix whatever it is that you had going on. Very simple to do. You can fix any run simply by pulling it up on the screen using the search menu, which is up here in the upper left, or you can go to the event logbook button again, and right above each column is a see it button. Let me put a line here just a second. These see it buttons right here. You'll notice some of them are in red. Whenever they're in red, that means I was on the brakes or hit the brakes or did a run completion on that run, and therefore it turns it red to let you know that you were on the brakes. But if I want to see 10-9 run number 4, I just click see it above that run, which I'll do right now after I erase the drawings. And as soon as I do, run number 4 from 10-9 appears. So that's how that works. But let's get back to the logbook. Control L gets me right there. And so what is important here is in between the columns are these little bitty numbers. I'll draw lines around them. These are the differences between each run for whatever value that is. I'll circle these and explain them. So reaction time, I was 4 thou quicker between the first and the second run. My 60 foot was 15 thou quicker between the first and the second. My 330 was 4 thou, and maybe part of that is a lane difference. And I was 15 thou slower at the 8th mile. There was 313 feet difference in density altitude. The relative humidity was 3.3% better. My horsepower correction was 8 thousandths worse, and the grains of water down here were 5. Now below that is the split intervals. Your 60 to 330, I'll put an arrow or a circle around that. Your 330 to 660 and 60 foot to 8th mile, and all the times it took. We do all the math for you, and then in between is the difference. I like to see double O's here. And some of these, my car is fairly good. So here's everything looks pretty good split interval wise. I like to see double O's, and there of course is damn near perfect. So what I was talking about before though is when you put how light or dark it was, it appears in these little icons here. I'm circling about 20% down from the top of the screen. These are all, that one I got to fix because it wasn't bright. It was twilight then. But that's what these are. They tell you how bright or dark that run was. So go to this logbook. It's very important. There's 2 things in this logbook that will win you a lot of races. And one of them is the difference between your reaction time and your 60 foot. And we call it the inverse reaction principle, and that is if one of these is negative and the other is positive, you staged differently. That's usually the sign there. So let me give you an example. Here I'm 006, slower reaction time, and I'm quicker by 2 thou and 60 foot. That's usually the sign that either I staged more shallow, which is probably it, or the weather was a whole lot better. But in this case, only 67 feet difference in DA. My guess is the weather wasn't all that different. So that tells me I staged just a little bit worse. I mean, all day long I was killer, but that's just showing you that sometimes I can drive. Not always, but sometimes. So here we have important things to look at, especially if you have children with junior dragsters. This will really show up. You'll have 2 or 3 hundredths difference in reaction time and 2 or 3 hundredths in 60 foot. Very important that you keep track of that, and it helps the child understand how important staging is. Even adults should use this. The other thing that's really cool about this, on the upper left, you can print it, and there's also a stats button. The stats button is in orange. And what does stats do? Well, let me show you. Normal. I click on it, and it tells me the averages for both lanes. So when you do that, an orange screen appears in the middle, and it says I only went in the left lane once, and in the right lane 6 times. My average delay box is listed there, my average reaction time, and a lot of times you can see a difference in the actual track. So 9 thou average reaction time left lane, 6 thou in the right. 60 foot is quicker in the right. ET is almost identical, though, on average. Mile per hour is a little bit different. DA wasn't that much different. So that tells me lane to lane. Very important. And then here on the bottom, I don't know why my screen just flashed. It's kind of weird. Is two little check boxes that say normal and trimmed. What that does is it takes the high and the low out of the equation. So if I click trimmed, the left lane's not going to change, but the right lane's going to take the high and the low out of the equation and refactor the averages. So I'm 0055 average when you take the high and the low out versus 006 when they're in. My average ET 456.9, 456.9, really nothing different there. But if you've got 1 or 2 runs that are kind of weird, that's a good way to tell, because when you take the high and the low out of it and get what I call a more true average, you can get some additional information, whether it was just a fluke run or not. And this CW button on the upper left is current weather. If the weather station was plugged in and running, it would pop up and tell me what the current weather was so I could drag it around the screen and compare it. Used to be more important than what it is now, but I'll show you why. So get used to that logbook. To get out of the logbook, you just hit the escape key on your keyboard or click the upper left where that arrow to return is. So that's that arrow there, or just the escape key on your keyboard. Okay, let me erase that. Hit that. Let's see what questions here. David wants to know how you do multiple runs with 20 or 30. It will display up to 27, I think, on the screen. But when it does, I may have to go back a few. You'll have a line on the bottom of the screen. Let me actually, I'll do this. It's probably not. Search. I'm going to search. Use the search menu up here. Let me show you how this is going to go, because it's a great time to do this. I'm going to go up to search right up here, the file setup search menu, and then I'm going to search by this database. Very cool thing that you can do in Crew Chief. I'm going to search the second option down, search by database name. I click that. It highlights my existing database, and I press enter. I'm going to go way down here, 20 some runs, and now go to my event logbook, and you can see there's the logbook. Let me get the pen. Has a scrolling line on the bottom, and you can move it over. There's, I don't remember the total, but I think it's 27, I think, somewhere in that area, that'll handle it one time. And you can print it. Let me see if that works even without a printer hooked up here. I got a screen, and it'll do 10 at a time. And let's see, hit the escape key, the second one, third one, and then back. So it'll do up to about, I think it does up at around 30 on that logbook. Hopefully that answers your question. The logbook, okay, Joe wants to know how come only 3 digits appear. I have limited screen space on the logbook, very limited. Matter of fact, I have to squeeze quite a bit. So I round a lot of those. It's just the unfortunate part about having to decide how much screen space you can use. You had an issue adding runs after midnight. Again, I can get with you later on that. It'll just go to the next day. If you click start new run and your weather station was adding, then it should have no problem. Aaron wants to know, will I cover the backup process? Yes, I will. The backup process couldn't be simpler. You just click on the file menu, go to backup data files right here in the upper left, insert a USB flash drive, and select that flash drive letter when it pops up and asks you what drive it is. And about 30 seconds later, you'll be done. Okay, well, let's go back up to databases now, because this is important to cover. Now, on your screens, you may see 3 files that we have put forth that let you download. I believe they're PDF files. If you see them, fine. If you don't, you can get them emailed to you tomorrow. But they should be on your screen somewhere that you can click on and download 3 of those files. And they kind of go over all of the points that we're trying to make here. But going up to databases again, the top of the screen, here's a list of my databases. Now, you don't probably need this many, but this is really old, some of the really old databases versus some of the really new ones. So I like to put the year in front of it when I'm doing stuff like that. You'll see these like 2017, 2018, 2021, 2020, where whatever changes I'm making. So the proper way to do that is to create a database name, which is done up here, right there. You can name it whatever means something to you. You don't need a million characters. I just put mine 2021 0125 first timer super comp. Tells me everything I need to know about that database. You put in the weight, the gear ratios, launch RPMs, tire pressures, rollout if you know it. That's optional right there. A lot of this stuff is optional, just if you know it. Front tire pressure, delay box that you normally use on average. And then you also have this checkbox that if you want the delay box to show up when you enter runs. If you don't run a delay box, uncheck that. Your tree type is going to be 000 unless you're at an ancient old track that still has a 0.4 or 0.5 in their ET slips. Pretty rare that you would have it. Just leave them at 000 if you don't know. The classes that you're running, you got ET bracket races, super comp, whatever. Your dial-in will be whatever your average, just try to come up with a dial-in if you're a dial-in type car. In this particular case, super comp, I'm running 890, that's it. Here is your quarter mile, eighth mile, or 1,000-foot check boxes. So you've got to make sure you do all that. And then below that is the ET always under 10. This used to be more important than it actually is. We kind of figured it out on our own now, so you don't really have to worry about this. But, check them if you know it. If you don't worry about it. Just let crew chief figure it for you. Throttle stop used, right there, if you use it. And then you got to make sure you go into setup info page 2 right here. I'm going to bring your attention to that because people forget that. And that's not really your fault. That's kind of our fault. But this yellow up here in the left middle top area, my dog is right behind me drinking out of the water. Hold on, I'll wait for him to finish. But when you go to setup info page 2, it has more information like your throttle stop timers if you're using one. What vehicle type you're using. Right here, I have separate vehicle types for if I'm quarter mile racing or eighth mile racing. I'll show you that in a second. Right there, that's that. If you're running throttle stop, a normal electronic one, put your throttle stop 1 in and give us a starting ratio. If I'm 220 to 1, 2.2 to 1, most people will tell you, but in reality, that's 0.022 in actual terms of mathematical stuff. Race gas, alcohol, methanol, whatever, junior dragster alcohol, that's right here, where I'm going to put an arrow right there. Fuel system used, and if it's dual carburetors, make sure you check that. And let me erase these because it's starting to get a little cluttered. And then down here is the HP calculation index on the bottom right. That is used to calculate horsepower of your engine. It'll automatically move itself on the new version. If it's a throttle stop class, it'll start at 213. If it's a junior, it'll put it 160. Eighth mile racing, you know, those are the defaults. It'll automatically fill that in for you. And Time Slip Simulator, those of you that may not realize, but we offer Time Slip Simulator, and it's a game. I'll go over that with you guys here in a minute. But that's the vehicle type that's there. Time Slip Simulator is available. It's like $69.95 a year, $79.95 a year. And it's got some cool stuff that I'll show you guys here in a minute. But so that's my quarter mile super comp setup. Okay, no big deal. I want to show you how different an eighth mile is. So I'll go find an eighth mile, hit 1. If you just click on any of them and hit first digit, it'll jump right to it. Here's my eighth mile sea level shift, or a 1.9 shift. But so here on this particular one, it's a bracket race of eighth mile. So let's bring your attention down to why it's important. Right down here, eighth mile is checked. So when it's eighth mile, it knows to shut off fields. When I have this selected, it will shut off all the things after the 1,000 foot. And it's not a throttle stop database, so it turns off any throttle stop information. That's how it knows. So it's really simple. You know, I want a delay box there, but you name it up here how it should be. I know that's 1.9 shift. I also have a 210 shift that I normally use in Illinois, which is right here. But in this particular case, I was just running the 1.9 shift. 210 will give me a little bit more ET. Not really necessary. But there is some oddball stuff like eighth mile super comp racing, new Schmidt motor, that was a long time ago. Different launch RPMs. You know, I had 4,400, 4,800, 5,200. Pomona super comp. A couple of years, Pomona was just impossible to get down. And I'll also have databases for really good atmospheric conditions. You know, if I'm at a sea level track, the car is usually really, really fast. Jetting may need to be changed, so I make a database for that. Very important that you make enough databases, but not too many. So here's a good rule of thumb. Make a database for the track you normally race at, and don't do anything else. Don't add another one until you go to another track and have a reason to change. So if I go from Mid-State Raceway or Central Illinois Dragway and I go eighth mile racing somewhere else, if I unload and my prediction says I'm going to go 455.9 and I go 455.8 or 9 or whatever, if it's really close within, say, 800ths or maybe even, or 800, excuse me, 8,000ths, I don't make a new database. But if I unload and it says it's going to go 455 and it goes 452, and I've never been to this track, then that tells me the track's clocks are probably a little bit happy. So I should make a new database for that. And a good explanation for that is like, where was it? I have some for Bowling Green. I have some for a couple other places that are just different. You know, they're just different, and I needed a database for that reason. So, you know, like Palm Beach, when it was, unfortunately, it's going away, but I had one for that because that track was really well prepped. Immokalee, I had one for that because Immokalee was really well prepped, I thought. So in places where the clocks are not consistent with other tracks, I make a new database. I don't just make one for every track. I only make them when they're necessary to make them. But make enough, but not too many. And don't make a whole bunch at once when you first get it. Just make one. Let's get it where predictions are good. And then this is a really important feature in Crew Chief software that you must know. once you get a good working database, if you decide at that time that you need to make a new database for whatever reason, here's an Earlville one, for example. Well, I had this particular database, 2021, that worked really well for me. And then I went to Earlville, Iowa. So in order for Crew Chief to work well, we don't want to have to relearn everything. So what happens is I have this great working database, and to make a copy of one, I just highlight it. Here, let me go through this. I double click over here, then I'll press enter. And the reason for that is I want to make damn sure you're on the right database. So double click in there or press enter there. And then once you press enter, it'll highlight in red this field called database name. And then and only then can you click the start new database. And I'm going to do a lot of loopy-loos here. And what that does is it will have a blank name that you'll have to type in, but it will copy all of the factors that control predictions and all the setups for eighth mile, quarter mile, whatever it is you want to copy. And all you're doing is you're copying all the factors, all the prediction logic over to another database and assigning a new name. And therefore, you know right away that the factors are going to be really good right out of the gate. And Earlville is a downhill racetrack. So I know the factors were working real well. I just wanted a new database for that fact because it's just a little different ET than most other tracks. So when you click Start New Database, it copied that database. I just called it a new name called Earlville. And it had all exactly the same factors and logic now under Earlville as it did on the other one. I don't have to have it relearn anything. So very important. Then as soon as you put in a new name and press enter, save it. Do not forget to save down here. Okay, down the bottom middle is the save button. Don't forget that. I create a new database. Let me do one for you real quick here. Let me erase all these. So I'm going to copy this just to show you. I'm going to make a copy of this. So I double clicked where it says double click to select a database. Then I pressed enter. Now I'm going to click Start New Database. And it puts two little stars to let you know that it's beginning a new database. And nothing else you can do. You can't change to a different database right now. You've got to type in a new name. So I'm going to type in 2022 SuperComp 0.125 number one timer. Press enter. Then I'm going to save it immediately. And now it's put in this database, 2022 SuperComp 0.125 timer. All the factors are copied over, and I can start using this. Now, I really don't need a new database since I haven't changed anything in the car, but I want to show you how this works. All of the fields are the same. All of this stuff came over exactly the way it's supposed to, and I'm ready to go with a new database that I know is right away. So that's important. I want to make sure you guys understand that. Let me look at some of these. There's a lot of questions here. Okay, James wants to know if you race on the same track but with and without throttle stops, should I make different databases? Obviously, yes, you want to do that because throttle stops will slow the car down, and you want to make sure that that you have one for each database, for each setup. So if you're throttle stop racing one run and all out on the next class, have two different databases because you're going to change how it predicts. Which ET prediction factor is best used for fuel induction you use? Mark, that's probably better set for next week because I don't want this to go real long. That's a very technical thing. I'll get into a little bit of it, but not much. Do I need to erase old databases? No, you don't. You can if you want, but make a new database and enter runs into it first before you ever delete old databases. And that's just to make sure you don't accidentally do something you don't want to do. There's nothing wrong with having old databases in there. As you can see, I've got a whole bunch of them. When you have one database on the screen and you're in prediction mode, it doesn't see old databases. It doesn't see anything but the database that's on the screen. So there's nothing that you're going to do to hurt crew chief by having old databases. All right. And then, sorry, I joined a little late. How do you go between eighth mile and quarter mile? Yeah, we covered that a while ago, but I'll show you guys in a minute. If we put in a new motor in the car, how do we proceed with the databases? Just like I said, just create a new one, call it whatever you're supposed to call it, and then you'll be fine. That's all you got to really do. So when you ask about new motor, you'll see I have some in here that will say new motor or whatever. It's I'll probably have to go quite a bit down here, but new engine, like that one. Fontucky for Fontana, Abruzzi transmission and torque converters. I have databases for those just to make sure whatever torque converter I try is right. If it's not, then I can go back to a different database and know it predicts just fine when I put my old converter in. Even brand new car like this one when I first got that car. So I'm going to exit databases on the bottom right and go back to the run entry. And so you can see here, this is an eighth mile 190 shift database, and it's on the screen. Now, I switch back a couple using the switch to previous runs, and we're going to pull up down here. I'm going to switch to different runs now. I'm going to switch, 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 switch. And eventually, this is eighth miles Mockley stuff. 447s, 446s. Jesus, that was fun. And this is between the throttle stop database. So this is 218 Rockingham, number one stop, for example. And the next run, I went back to a Mockley. So it automatically knows, based on that database, what controls it. Here's a very important rule here. You never, ever, ever drop down this database drop-down list on a perfectly good run and change the database thinking you're going to pull up different runs. Never, ever drop this down and change the database unless you've made a complete screw up and put the wrong database in. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to make sure people have been known to drop this list down, pick a different database, press enter, and save the run for no reason at all, thinking they're going to do a search. If you're going to search for a different run, how do we do that? We go up to the search menu at the top left, and we drop it down, and we find what we want. So I'm going to go to search. I'm going to search by database, by date, by track, by ET or mile per hour, by weather, by different weather combination. I can search by opponents. I can search on comments, or I can search by throttle stops. I'm going to search by track, for example. And I'm going to go to, say, let's go to, what's a good one? Indianapolis. Let's go to Indianapolis Raceway Park. As soon as I do, it pulls up all the runs at Indianapolis Raceway Park. That's the search screen right here. And it wants you to pick one of these. On the bottom of the search screens, it'll tell you how many runs it found, 197 runs at IRP. And on the bottom left of every single search screen are the averages for both lanes. My average reaction time in both lanes, my average 60-foot ET, all that for all of the runs, whether they're eighth mile or supercomp. I'm 16 in the left lane and I'm 10 in the right on average for 197 runs at that track. Not bad. So other thing is, if you do this and you don't have a lane field right there, call me and I'll walk you through a very instant way to get lane in your screen. Very important. So this is your search screen. When it's up there, it wants you to pick a run. So let's say I'm going to, let me erase this just a second, erase all drawings. I want this run for whatever reason. Now let's pick a better one. Let's pick this one. I highlight it or press enter or double click, and boom, there's that run on the screen. I was red by 28, went 890 with a 2 on an 890 index. Perfect prediction, it says on the notes. Again, type in notes on the bottom, and it tells me everything I need to know about that run. And it says predict throttle stop. Okay, so now it's wanting to predict throttle stops on that prediction screen. So now if I go back to my 8th mile races, I go last, pull up this last run, and now it says predict ET, and now it wants to predict the lapse times. See how that works? Because that database, 8th mile sea level, is a non-throttle stop database, and it goes to predict ET. I go back, switch back a few runs to a different run, and hit, now it's predict throttle stop. Pretty cool. That's how it works. So that's why it's so important to set up the right databases and know how to enter them. So entering a run is simple. You put the date in, press enter, put the run number if it's an old run. If it's a brand new run from today, you'll click the start new run. You put the time of day in, and as soon as you do, we'll look up the weather. If you have a trailer weather station from us, we'll look up the weather and fill it in for you in the weather fields in the middle of the screen here. All of that, if you have a trailer-based weather station, will fill in for you automatically. Let me change colors here in a second. Let's go with hot pink because I can see it. So all of these weather fields come in from your weather station. And all these calculations here you can't get into. They're all our calculations, just as double checking to make sure. So as you enter the runs, you get to lane, what round it was. You put in your delay box if it is one. And this is a drop down for how you stage. Normal, shallow, 1 bump, 2 bumps. Then you click on how bright it was. It was bright, or it's overcast, or whatever it is. And then you just continue move down through the fields. Now here's a cool thing. I want to get everybody's attention on this because this is brand new for this new version. Right there, I'm 15 on the tree. You see that 0.015? The new version of Crew Chief, I don't have to type all of that. I can just type 15 and press enter and watch what happens. It fills in 0.015. If I was 7 on the tree, 7th thou, I type 7, press enter. See how it fills it in for you? My whole goal when you're entering runs is not to use the decimal point. However, that being said, if you're on a track that has 4-digit precision, you'll still need a decimal. But I'll show you that later if you want me to. 60 foot, I don't need decimals for this either. For any of the ETs or mile an hour, you don't need decimals. 147.4, 1474. See how it puts the decimal for me? My 330, now watch what happens. It's 4307, 4307. Notice it says 43 seconds. I have not pressed enter. Watch what happens when I press enter. It knows 43 seconds is not valid. It automatically figures out what it should be and fixes it for you. And you'll notice it didn't bother you and tell you, hey, look, we fixed it for you. It just fixed it and moved on. I don't want you to be bothered with a prompt that says, hey, you can't be 43 seconds, or allow you to put 43 seconds in there. That would really screw up your logbook. So I've raced so often, and I've been doing this 30 some years now, that I want Crew Chief to be as fast as possible. And to do that, I make improvements and I fix your screw ups without making a big deal about it. I just fix things. So 660 ETU, 614.8, 6148, press enter. Oops, hold on, let me get out of that. So if I double click, 6148, 138.88, 138.88. See, the decimal is automatically placed. So all of that works without decimal points. Throttle stops, you'll still need decimal points if it's electronic. UT racers, again, it won't matter. And the same thing applies to temperature. Like if I type 730, it says 730. As soon as I press enter, we just fix it. Humidity 73.9, 739. 739% humidity is not allowed, so as long when I press enter, it fixes it. It's really pretty cool how that works. So that's designed to speed up data entry. Anything that's important for that, I want to be able to get done in 20 seconds. So I don't even look up from my keyboard. I just zip through the ETs. I know the welder is already pulled over, and I just quickly go down to the bottom left and save it. Right down here, don't forget to save the run. Okay, very important, obviously. So other things that are important, of course, we want the traction meter. Let me bring the pen to that again, but that's your decision, 0 to 100. Again, I don't predict with anything in the 70s. I don't even like to predict anything under 85 because usually that tells me that the track's about to change something fierce. So if you know your car real well and the track, you know the first run of the day is never going to be very good, then this is a really important thing. Tire pressures, front tire pressure, launch, that all comes from your databases. So all that is pulled over. When I switch databases, the tire pressures come with it. The launch RPMs come with it. All the important stuff. All of this on the right-hand side is optional information. We can't take the chance of you screwing it up so badly then throwing our predictions off. So it's for your reporting use and nothing really else. Let me see here. Let me see what they're saying here. Let me get these out of there. John must just showed up. John Bryant, yeah, I don't know if you heard, but when you enter old runs, you just give us the date, press enter for that old run, put in the run number for that date, press enter. You do not use the start new run button on old runs. We've gone through that several times on this webinar already, but if you got late, again, you'll be able to download this tomorrow, the video of it. It was designed to go really quick. I didn't want it to go much more than an hour, but it's probably going to. Next week, we're going to have more in-depth stuff on it, but this will get you started. Car setup tab on the upper left here is for you to fill in your jets and all that. Again, people don't use this nearly as much as they should, but it's important. Once you fill it in once, we'll remember it. You don't have to fill it in over and over and over and over again. Opponent information. Always put opponents in there. Very important, because not only will the opponents tell you the margin of victory at every interval right here where I'm circling, but it'll store these people and you can search by people. Now, Rick Hughes has been a thorn in my side. I like the guy, but he beat me at the national event final round, and he beat me at this race with a 001. He's a customer, of course, and I had nowhere to go. I couldn't beat the guy. He had me locked out. He was 001 on the tree. I was 15. He had me 14 thou there. Best I could do is tie him. But I can search every run I've made against Rick Hughes in the search menu, which is nice to know. What he runs, how he runs, etc., his mile per hour. Let me get rid of this. I'll erase the drawings. So the other thing, you put in their name, their number, and if you've run them before, it'll automatically fill in their name or look them up by their number. And you can put any comments. How he stages is important, or she stages is important. And then below that, it tells you how close the race was on the bottom right here. And you get the minion guy down here who's going, what, when you lose, and a guy that's happy when you win. So I took the stripe by 1 foot 3.5 inches right here. I tightened it up as good as I could. I was dialed fairly honest, and I just barely snuck around him, and I thought it was a pretty good run, but he beat me. It is what it is. So that is very important, because if you run these people again, it's nice to be able to search for them. And you can search for them under the search menu again in that upper left. Very important area. All right, let me erase these drawings. The other thing on here that's really important, those of you that are thinking about it or have it, is Time Slip Simulator. It's an option, like 70 some dollars, I think 79 bucks a year. It goes to an Australian company, but it's pretty damn cool. So here I can click this and Time Slip Simulator will launch. And I can hit play. Let me erase the drawings. It will fill in for you all of the ET information. And then I click Simulate in the bottom right. And it's a video game. And it's got the information here. I can look at it from different ways. It's pretty damn cool. And we'll play one of these races. Full speed. It knows which lane they're supposed to be in. And you notice it's like the ESPN camera view. Changes color or angles all the time. That's how close that race was. I can turn the finish line off and I can turn track position on. It will tell me how close it was. I took a foot stripe. I thought I did pretty good. I'll resume that and then I'll play it again from a different mode. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to look, watch opponent the whole way. That's him. He moves. He's a little slower car, and then, or excuse me, I'm the faster car, so I'm going to be. This is how it looked from Rick Hughes's point of view, all the way down. Now, if I go right lane, this is how it looked from my angle. I got out on him, then my throttle stop came on. Now he's ahead of me barely, but I'm tracking him down. You can also go to super slow motion, which is kind of neat. So that's an option. There's a whole bunch of things it'll do. I highly recommend it. It's very informative, whether you're a junior dragster racer, which I think it's really important for them, or not. The next tab over is run completion. That's this tab right here. Very important. If you're on the brakes or just lift, this will tell you what you would have run had you not lifted. And that's what that is for. Very important. I have a lot of customers don't realize this exists, and I'm not even sure why. But it will tell you what you should have run, and you can even choose different runs with this button here to pick a different run as a baseline for your run completion. So if you're like, no, I don't want to go off my last run, it was weird all the way down, you hit choose different run, which is right here, and you pick a different run as a baseline. There's also different excuse me, formulas for run completion on the bottom right. I'm going to circle this. It's that important. You can use off 1,000 foot. If you're a quarter mile, you can go off 1,000 foot momentum, which is a little more precise formula. You can go off the 8th mile if you don't make it to the 1,000 foot. If you're 8th mile racing, you can go off of 330, the 330 momentum, or off the 594 foot clocking. So we cover everything in here to give you exactly what your run completion should be, plus or minus 1,000th of a second usually. I don't care what formula other people are using. This is a really good formula, and it works precisely right. Erase all drawings. I don't use off 1,000 foot all that often because it's your car does not hold exactly off 1,000 foot to the quarter mile every single time, and the momentum one will dictate that and calculate it really well. The next time over is predict throttle stop or predict DT, depending what it is you're doing. Let me get here. So I'm going to go back to the last run at this track. Let's see here. So my opponent, oh yeah, he broke, so that's not a really good run there. But let's go back a run, see if that was any better. 15, opponent was 27. It wasn't all that great of a run either. But you can run Time Slip Simulator off of 8th mile, and it's actually pretty cool. I haven't done the time slip on this one. I think it'll be kind of neat to watch. Let me see. I'm going to go, I think it was the right lane. Watch my opponent and play. My opponent leaves first, and I got to hunt him down. And I can go to super slow motion up here in the top middle and see it Kind of cool how you can slow it down to full speed. So let me, I'm going to do this again. This is kind of cool. Resume play. This is how he was actually in a motorcycle, but I was quite a few mile an hour faster. That's how it unfolded. And it's kind of neat. You can do that, or you can look down. This is a popular one, but the problem with this one is that he disappears from view. And you see him coming back. That's how it looked. Kind of cool, though. Get out. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go to the Predict ET tab, which is a lot of what people basically pay us for. And I want to show you a couple of things on Predict ET. First and most important is when I do a prediction, I'm always trying to verify what Crew Chief is telling me. And how I do that is pretty cool. Crew Chief software has this really neat feature. I'm going to circle the current column. Those of you with trailer weather stations, this will fill in every 15 seconds and update. But what's really neat is I do a prediction, and then I say, okay, what have I done under similar conditions? I want to see all the runs. Let's just change some of this weather because I don't have my weather station hooked up. Let's say it was 68 degrees, 44% humidity, and the barometer was 2918. So I go down here and I say, okay, it's going to be quicker by a long shot. What have I done under similar conditions? So let me bring your attention to anything in this current column that I've circled, anything, any value, you can right click on. For example, I'm going to go down here to weather station density altitude, and I'm going to take my mouse and right click on it. And what that does is it looks for all the runs plus or minus a couple 100 feet, 100 feet above or below, and it shows me all of the runs that I've made under similar conditions. Now it shows 65 runs on the bottom left. So a lot of these aren't really useful. But it also, to the right of that, it says show current database only. You see that in the bottom right, I've circled show current. So I'm going to check show current only, and it's going to get rid of everything but this particular database. And it says, okay, of all the runs of similar conditions, you've gone a 451 with a 3 and a 450 with a 3. That's what you've run with similar conditions. Now that's with 60 foots of 103, and in this particular case, I'm one flat. So what that means is that could be on different tracks, you know, where that's not really that useful. And that's kind of the problem with this track compared to others. So let me get rid of, I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to put more, I don't know, more believable numbers in here. Let's go to 72 degrees and 79% humidity. And then I'm going to right click on DA. And then I'm going to show current database only. And it only found one run under similar conditions. I want a 456.9. So, but that again was with a quicker 60 foot. So erase all drawings. So what I do is I look at that and I say, okay, how close is that to what's really happening? And it will tell me what I've done under similar conditions. Now I can combine weather values. So if I go down the bottom middle here, there's a button that says search weather. I can combine, like when I go to Las Vegas, I can have 4,000 feet of density altitude to Las Vegas, and I can have 4,000 feet in Illinois or Indianapolis or anywhere for that matter, but it's not going to run the same. And what this does is it says, okay, let's find all the runs with not only the same density altitude, but you can check whatever else is important. If grains of water is important to you, check grains of water. If barometer or humidity, usually I'm going to check one water content, either vapor pressure, humidity, or grains of water, and I'll check barometer, and it will fine tune that. So what I do is I check, hold on, let me get there, non-drying, barometer. I found one similar run with similar density, altitude, and barometer, and I can display it, and here's the run. It's an 8900 run from a supercomp, so that doesn't help us. So when I do a prediction, if I don't find any runs under similar conditions, then I've got to go with what it says. And usually it's going to be very, very accurate. In this case, what you can also do in Crew Chief is pull up other runs. Down here on the bottom left, I want to show you the switch to previous run right here and switch to next run. So I want to compare runs from this weekend. My cat is trying to climb on the computer. Hold on. So I'm going to switch back a run and, pull up. No, that one wasn't a very good run. But here's the runs. And I can say, okay, what are these predictions all saying? 455, 455, 455, 455, 455 about. So I can look at a lot of different runs and say, comes up with basically the same answer. And I feel a lot better. But that's important to learn. In Crew Chief, you want to have a double checking ability, and we have it anywhere. I mean, it's just amazing what you can do. Like if I want to see all the runs at 72 degrees, I just right click on, here they all are. 222 runs at 72 degrees. That's not really all that useful, but let's say grains of water and 95 grains. How many runs have I made at 95.2 grains? Plus or minus a little. It found 26 runs. So it's a really cool double checking feature. Adjusted altitude. I'll right click on 1627 and found 205 runs of similar. So, I only found 2 runs that I've made under similar grains of water or whatever it is, adjusted altitude, whatever it is I select. But when I get done with the predictions, and it only takes me a millisecond to double check, I do. And I feel a lot better when it pulls up that there's been 10 runs of 454 to 455 with similar altitudes. I feel really good about it. Then I know, by golly, it's got to be a really good prediction. So the predictions, let me show you, are controlled. The bottom 2 are controlled with this. Choose formula on the bottom right, okay? A go-to formula for most people is this DA with half barrel, half humidity. That's where most people start. Very good formula. Again, that affects the bottom 2 formulas. So if I drop that down, I can pick a different formula. Let's see, temp, barometer, and barometer and dew point. And I purposely made this wrong just to show you what would happen here. I screwed up the factors that control this prediction. See, a 454 is almost 455 is what the car should run. And here it's showing 409. So I know that there's something screwed up with the temp, barometer, or dew point in the factors. What are factors, you say? Factors are what control the prediction logic, and that is right here. Factors is a tab right there. Okay? So when I go to factors, I can see all the things that control that. Well, the temperature is set at an impossible number of 0.074. It should be like 2.5 and then save it. The dew point is set at, that's good, and the barometer looks good. So I'm going to save that, and now you notice the predictions came right back in line. But I had purposely done that, is screwed up a factor just to show you we have to allow you to change factors. And we can't really tell you unless it's 0 that this is goofy. You make that decision, you kind of have to live with that. So temp, barometer, and dew point, let's try relative humidity. It works real well. Density altitude's the 3rd one down. Oops, missed it. And then you can try different ones. Horsepower correction is a good one. DA, half barrel, half humidity, about halfway down, is a go-to one. But you can cycle with it. Crew Chief number 1 is not affected by that. This guy right here that I'm going to draw a line is an entirely separate formula. This is for the Peter Biondos and Jed Coughlins and those people of the world. They can custom make this formula do a lot of different things. So I'm going to go there. And to do that, all you have to do is click right where it says 4.547 right there. Just click it and watch what happens. It'll bring up and say, create your own formula. And this is where you'll pick different items. And let me get a pen to it and show you. Again, all my pick lists look the same. So you can choose whatever you want. Right here is not normal. Adjusted altitude and grains of water are selected right now. That's the only thing I want in that prediction. Now that's not normal for me. Usually I would use vapor HP correction, which I'm going to circle, and barometer. But I wanted to show you how this works. So let's give you an example of it. Let me erase and just show you what happens here. Use this. This feature is in one of those screen or the files that we give you that goes over this as well. But I'm going to go to vapor HP correction, which is my own formula that Don Higgins created, and barometer, and see what the answer is. It went to 454.5. Not a huge difference. Just want to show you. I can click on it and tinker. Nothing wrong with tinkering. If you get it all out of whack, you can just go down here in the bottom middle where it says use AA default formula. And that's, then it goes back to a default starting point. I can click it again, and vapor HP correction will normally account for a good chunk of that. It really works pretty well on many cars. Not everybody, but for my car, it's like deadly. And when I combine it with barometer, which is the only one that I really want you to combine it with, vapor HP correction that I just clicked on has a lot of water content in it and a horsepower correction factor built into it as well. So it's kind of takes the best of both worlds. Does it always work? No. But that's just the way it is. Now, there are some weird things over here on the right. These are the values that control this. So if you want barometer, it's 0.1 equals 100th, and vapor HP, my dog's drinking again. Vapor HP correction, a good starting point for people that bracket race are these numbers, 0.0089, 0.005 to 0.009. If you're on alcohol, like 0.0119 as a good starting point, maybe higher. But that works really well and it's a brand new formula that I tinker with monthly. I mean, I literally, this is a very large formula, and I tinker with the math and try new things with it all the time. So what this means is these fields here are the values that control it to the right. And this, even though it's not named, this is for large swings. There are going to be more of these over here, but this little field by itself means large swings in altitude. I want this formula to be used rather than this. Even though they're the same, they may not always be the same. So that's why I've been tinkering with this a lot lately. So you can tinker with it. Let's uncheck some stuff here. My dog's looking at me like it wants to go out. I'm going to take barometer out of the equation. Probably won't change much, 3,000th of a second. So tinker with it and try it. If somebody says, hey, this is what the formula I use on my car. I get people that go to these classes all the time in drag racing, and they come back and say, I want to set up a formula like this. And I say, okay, what? And they click on this and they say, I want barometer, I want density, altitude, and I want vapor pressure. And I said, click it. So barometer, they want that. That's about right. Density, altitude, let's say they want 300. So I type 300. And vapor pressure, I go down here to the vapor pressure, and they say, well, so-and-so told me 0.07. So they type this in and say, save. Well, I can tell you right now, that's probably not going to work. That, for my car, would not be accurate. So I click on it and say, no, I know my car, when I'm using this 500 feet, vapor pressure is already, partially entered. It's going to be a high 54. I know that it's going to be at that altitude based on what I've seen. So they can try this. You can try whatever the people say to try, and I'll get rid of and just experiment if you want. Sometimes it'll make a difference. But that is for people that really want something different. They really want to customize it. And you go to these classes and they tell you that this is what you want. Well, put it in and try it. And you'll be surprised sometimes that, yes, it works really well, and other times, it doesn't work at all. So that's an experiment that you can tinker with, and know that you can't screw anything really up. If you get it all out of whack, I'm only a phone call away, so it's not a big deal. But let me go see what we have for questions. Okay, first one Sean wants to know is, if factors get out of whack, how do you change them? Well, it's really quite simple. You go to your factors tab. If it's all screwed up, and you can't hit your ass from a hole in the ground, you go to the factors tab, click on it, and you just go to the bottom right where it says reset factors. Right there, that will return it to where we want you to begin with whatever fuel type you're using. So these factors are purposely screwed up. Now, I've fixed a couple of them automatically. Like here, grains is set at 1. So if I say, no, I know this is all screwed up, I'm just going to click reset factors. And notice it just fixed whatever was out of whack automatically. It just clicking reset, and then I save it, I'm done. That's how you fix it. If you're really screwed up, that's one way to do it. All right, let's see here. I'll go in more detail, in another one, because these can get really pretty amazing, all the questions that we have about this. But I just want to show you some of the really cool things that Crew Chief can do in that area. So let's go over a couple other things, since this is the basics and I want to get going here. A lot of people don't realize, people that have had my software for 20 years don't realize it does this, but you click this little guy on the screen right up there, and that's a maintenance reminder. Okay, you click it, a box will pop up and says, well, what do you want to track? Well, last time I put spark plug wires in. It'll ask you how many runs you want to, and it'll tell you right away how many runs are remaining. You can print a list, and it will tell you, when you're all of the things that you have listed, how many days or runs are remaining, just like that. Now, I used to have this where it would pop up on the screen when you entered a run and say, hey, you need to do this, but it just got so annoying, I took it out. So you have to look at it on your own. I use it for not only oil changes on the race car, but I do it on my truck, my street car, my wheel bearings on my trailer, all that, just to keep track when the last time you did something. To the right of that is notes. If you want to write notes to remember, that's a good place to do it. Let's see what all these are here. Okay, Jake would like to know, if you have a dragster and want to add 2 juniors, do you need a team license? Team license would be required if 2 cars are in the same class. If you want predictions at the same time. Jake, let me show you what that looks like. This is the team license, and that's for multiple cars. On my screen, I have that. It's an option. But when I turn the team on, the prediction screen is going to change to one with how many ever people are on it, like Larry's and mine are in it. I can add up to 5 cars at once, and they will predict at the same time and go out over the pager or text messages at the same time. So that's how you do it. Entering multiple cars, probably best to give me a call. And I think it's beyond the scope of this right now. But let's go with whatever else is here. Let me see. How do I get these back? Let's see. Show answered questions. Well, if I could get this question thing to pop over, questions, it would be really nice if I could do that. For some reason, it doesn't want to see. I can't see what questions are. Weird. So on predict, that's in a nutshell how the basic part of predictions work. I mean, I can get more detailed and all that, but let's go over a couple of things that are important, though, that I can't leave you with without doing. Here is the 60-foot area. Okay, this says density adjusted 60 foot. You can drop this down and let it calculate 60 foots for you. Like if I want to do my average 60 foot in the database, it's a 103. If I want to do density adjusted, it's 1 flat. If I want to do vapor pressure adjusted or humidity adjusted 60 foot, it'll change the estimated 60 foot for you. Barometer adjusted, whatever it is. So if it goes to 88 degrees and I say, okay, I want density adjusted 60 foot, it'll move a second. There. And just a minute, let me get this where weather is on. Turn the weather off. And it will move the 60 foot based on whatever it is you put in there. As it changes, it'll update. Oh, I've got it. It's waiting on hold on a second. It's waiting on input from a weather station. Just a minute. And I can also go down here to the bottom and say, what is the average 60 foot? Or I can go DA barrel or horsepower correction. Those are, again, stuff you can experiment with. The second option down, density adjusted 60 foot, is the most common. And I use that almost all of the time because it just hits my car really well. So when, let me get back, sorry, I clicked too quick. When I select something like that, it will tell me right away, that the 60 foot's going to go slower. I put this in about 15 years ago after I lost a race. I got too busy and my mind wasn't on right, and it was at Indianapolis, U.S. Nationals, and the DA had gone up 1,500 feet, and I forgot to change my estimated 60 foot. Now, what I want to bring to your attention is, if you say, no, that's not right, it's going to be a 102. 102. Press enter. It changes to your estimated 60 foot automatically and changes your predictions, as you can see. You can override them, and it will stay at 102 until the cows come home or unless the estimated 60 foot is in la la land. So just want to let you know. And the other thing here is you can turn wind on or off. Now, I will use wind at certain tracks and not at others. When you turn the wind on, you got to be damn sure that where you are is at correct wind. Because if you're wrong, every page you get will have different wind predictions. So like for here, I'm going to turn the wind on. Let's say it's going to go to a 10-mile-an-hour headwind. It says it's going to be a 458 with the wind on. Without the wind on, it's going to be a 456. So that 200s, is that right or wrong? And there's some tracks that it's windy, but it doesn't hit the track. It's the stands or you're in a bowl, whatever the reason is. And then there's other tracks like Joliet or Las Vegas where it's brutal. It's 30-mile-an-hour tailwind one day, 30-mile-an-hour headwind the other. You got to decide how important that is. So a lot of this other stuff, weather graphs, you can graph weather readings throughout the day if you have a trailer-based weather station. You can even change dates right here and pick a different date and say, what was it that day? And it'll graph the whole day. So there's a lot of cool stuff in Crew Chief. Finish line managers, if you're going to run somebody, before you run them, it'll tell you how close the race is going to be. But again, that's for another day. I just wanted to cover those basic things. So let's see what these questions are, and I'll get... Wayne wants to know when you can view it. It'll be available tomorrow to download, and we'll send you guys a link, everybody who signed up. Are you planning a webinar for juniors? Yes. Lisa Bell, it will be next, probably Thursday. It'll be only on juniors. How accurate are the wind change predictions on my car? They're very accurate, provided the wind is accurate. Now, there's some tracks I go to. Pacific Raceways is one of those where if you're pitted down 300 feet below track level, it probably isn't. And Wayne, yeah, you can call me anytime about the multiple car deal, and we'll go from there. The wind factors are very accurate if the wind sensors have wind direction line that you have to point down the track. I get a lot of calls from people saying the prediction's way off, it's backwards. Well, they don't know about that little line on the wind sensor, and they got to be accurate. You got to be very careful with the wind on. I will leave it on in certain tracks, and I will not turn it on in others. I will make the call myself. If the factors are out of whack, I already answered that. How do you edit opponent's database to clean up duplicates or wrong entries? You just go to opponents. You can either pull the run up on the screen using the search menu, and you can go to search by opponents. Like here, I'm going to do that. Hold on, I can't see this. Maybe I can drag it out of the way. Hold on a minute. And I can search by opponent name or number. Let's say I type in 33. Here's all the runs against 33. So if I've got a mistake, I'll pull up this last run. I go to the opponent information. I can type over it, whatever information, and save it again, and it will update. If I want to go more information or something else is screwed up, I want to bring your attention to the opponent's menu at the top of the screen. You see that? If you click that, let me go back to run entry first, and then go to opponents. You can pull up people by typing their number, and it'll pull up. And then let me bring this arrow up here again. Browse this opponent down here on the opponent's menu and pull them up. Let me just do that. And you can pull up every time you've run them. And if you know this is wrong, you just find the right guy with that number, double click on it, and his information will appear on that screen when you double click on that list, and you can fix whatever's wrong or delete it down here on the bottom. That's how you fix opponents. Erase drawings, exit. Is there anything different for front-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive? That's a pretty good question. I don't get a lot of front-wheel drive customers, so I mean, yeah, there might be. You'd have to change your front and rear tire pressure things, or the importance of them. But if you need something, Kevin, let me know, and I'll see if it's possible to do. It might be easier than a home, bigger motor, trans, so my data does no longer work. Sean, you asked about different motor. You can just make new databases and you're done. All right, well, it's gone a lot longer than I ever thought it was going to go. It really wasn't scheduled for anything more than about 45 minutes. For some reason, I can get off track a lot. But next week, there'll be three webinars. The first one will be on ET on Tuesday, and then Throttle Stop on Wednesday, and Thursday will be Junior Dragsters. Just to cover the cost, it'll be $10, but if that causes you a lot of grief, then perhaps this isn't the right sport. But I do appreciate all the customers. I hope you like what we've been able to do with Crew Chief, all the new features, especially reaction time and, ETs, trying to speed up data entry. I appreciate everybody. This is my 32nd year owning Crew Chief software. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. 33 years. You'll get invites for the other webinars this coming in the next few days. It'll be on my Facebook page for Crew Chief software, and you'll probably get emails too. But thank you very much. It's Doug says he's been 16 years. Learned again. I'm glad to hear that, Doug. And thank you, everybody. We had 251 people at this webinar, so I'm getting messages after minute. I'm just going through all the questions here, see if they've already been asked. But if you got specific things, you can email me. But again, thank you for showing up. I don't want to hold everybody up. But have a good night, what's left of it.